Hey guys, this is Tryptic, and we are kicking off the year 2022, a few days before it starts. Um, a long time has passed now. I've occasionally worked on my mod, and actually I've made some serious progress lately, but I haven't been doing videos for a while, and as we were playing and talking to gay people pointed out that it really is the YouTube videos that get new people interested in. We would like more and more people to be aware of this game and of this mod, and especially since Good Old Games recently released the original Armada and Armada 2, so you can now buy them legally again. So, the backstory, of course, is that in 2001, Star Trek Armada 2 came out. It was a little less popular than Star Trek Armada 1. It had the ships tended to die quickly. It had the warp mechanic, and it had a three-dimensional space, but not very well implemented. And then after that, the Fleet Operations Total Overhaul mod was created by a team of brilliant individuals, and they worked on that for several years. And then they stopped working on it. They started working on a new project, which has yet to come to fruition. And after that, a little while, I started working on Tryptic's mod, which is a balance update, and I started messing with some features and seeing what I can do. And then after that, separately from me, we got a bit of a community going again, and then Admiral Nat started creating Admiral's Edition. And from there, he's worked on that when he has time, and Drayzon, another community member, has been working on a texture update. And then he began doing balance tweaks and modifications to Admiral's Edition. So this game here was played today, December 29th, 2021, and this is Star Trek Armada 2 Fleet Operations Admiral's Edition version 1.13 Drayzon's edit, using Drayzon's textures. We've got quite a... Yeah, the details are stacking up. At the same time, I've released Tryptic's mod version 4 this week, and it has a couple bugs in it, so I'm continuing to update it and work with it. And yeah, so for those not familiar with this game at all, there are 5 factions. You gather 2 resources. You have dilithium and tritanium, blue moons and orange moons. There is a third resource called supply, which is not mined in the same ways. It has a bit of a different interaction with with each of the 5 races. And the thing that makes this game so unique and so interesting is the way all of the ships interact with each other. There's a lot of mechanics in play. Fundamentally, there are small ships, medium ships, and large ships, and then there are short-range ships, medium-range ships, and long-range ships. And there are a ton of different interactions where pulse weapons deal extra damage to small ships and reduce damage to large ships. Torpedoes are the opposite. They do extra damage to large ships and less to small. And then there are ships that specifically do bonus damage to long range or to short range, or take less damage from long range or short range. So by the time you're done, you get a very complicated network of balance and checks and counters where different things counter different things. So I actually had not played this version of Admiral's Edition before. I had been away for a while. I test my own mods so much, I don't get a lot of time to play with the community. But this is a 4 vs 4 on an old map. And yeah, so I do not know all the players in this. Let's see how well I can remember. So that's... I am blue as Tryptic. Above me to the left was Jokarrr. He was playing as Klingons. I think a lot of people picked random, but yeah, I got Romulans. Next to me was Starmaster Prodigy, who was Federation. And next to him, the purple player is WarpCore. I don't remember his faction. I think he was Klingons. And on the opposing side, in the top middle there, as you'd see, is the white player is MMartok. He got Romulans. The red player is Drayzon. He got Borg. Next to him was LIMON, who is green, and he also got Borg. And then on the right was Patawan, who's we're calling him new. I think he's been around in the past, but he came back after a very long time away. So he's learning the ropes, but he's picking up very quickly. And I do not remember his faction, but we'll see it in a minute. So in this game, there are earlier game ships and later game ships. And one of the things we've kind of struggled with over the years is, the tech progression. And this happens in every real-time strategy game, do you go straight to the late game ships? Like, is it worth building the early units that are kind of weak? Can you expand and focus on your economy and just get the super late game stuff? These days, recently it's all about Age of Empires 4 everyone's excited about, and that actually has the full-on eras where it's, do you even fight in era 2 or do you move up? And they tend to make it relatively difficult. Like, a lot of 1v1 or very competitive games will almost never reach era 4 in that game. In fleet operations, the differences are a lot less. It's not as starkly defined as Age of Empires 4, but there's still some big differences. So in this particular game, I noticed that Drayzon and LIMON both were not building ships early on. Drayzon actually went for the transmission matrix before the conduction matrix. Transmission matrix giving him certain upgrades that give him a stronger economy and powerful abilities in the late game, but it's the conduction matrix that allows you to build ships. So I saw this and I thought, well, he's not able to build ships at all. And the Borg have a rather unique situation there where they can't build turrets either, because their turret is a ship. It's the dodecahedron that turns into the Dode relay. So they have very, very strong miners, which makes it difficult to deal economic damage to them. But in a scenario like this, where this is a relatively small 8-player map, your run distance to each other's bases is not long. So I recognized that, here I'm scouting out MMartok. I'm realizing, MMartok has not been building ships out of his star yard. He must have a warbird yard somewhere. He must be going up to bigger ships. And I told Jokarrr, I was like, he's got to be forward expanding, which once again is a bit of an economic move, because he's not building any combat units at all. He's just trying to get to those large warbirds, and there it is. So with that construction, it's a little bit too late for Jokarrr to go prevent him from building it. But looking at this, if a person goes for a type of greedy build, a build where they are not defending themselves, they're just going full-on economy, they could always just die to regular military units, just walk across the map and punch them in the face. And like I say, we have quite a lot of trouble deciding exactly how strong each phase of the game should be. How easy should it be to walk across the map or fly across the map and punch them in the face? How easy should it be to tech up? If someone doesn't defend themselves, how screwed should they be? And obviously, I could be building my own warbirds here, but if I did, I wouldn't have any combat ships. So I have to make the decision, and every player in every game has to make the decision when they see what their opponent is going for. Is it better for me to take the safe road and go for my own big things? Well, I guess there's different safety and different risks associated with both. Do I build combat ships now, knowing that those combat ships will slow down my economy and prevent me from getting the big battleships, the big hitters later, and hope that my smaller ships can deal enough economic damage to him that it balances out? And in this case, I looked at it and I was like, man, that's a really greedy build. Like, that two Borg players. And Borg do have a little bit of a hard time in large multiplayer games because they don't scale very effectively. They have their own unique resource called collective connections that limits how fast they can build ships, which makes it very difficult for them when there's a large amount of resources on the map, because they have to, they have trouble spending a large amount of resources. If it's a map where you happen to be very rich, their extra resources are harder to spend because they gather things like collective connections and supply over time. So time is just a limiting factor. So in this case, I went for the Jokarrr, which is a low-level Romulan ship. It has torpedo weapons, so it deals extra damage to large, but it's not a very strong ship. It is a ship that can very easily get outclassed later in the game. And for a little while, I thought I would want to go for the Spectre refit because the generics can be upgraded into a somewhat stronger combat ship, the Spectre. However, I realized the Spectre deals bonus damage to small ships, ships with low defense. It has a very specific projectile weaponry. And I looked at that and I realized I can't do that. I can't spend my resources upgrading these things to the more expensive Spectres. They do have more offense value, but they're not going to do much more damage to these Borg, to these large ships that come out, because the torpedoes will already be dealing bonus damage. So I realized I just had to go 2 yards, 2 small yards, and try to continually pump. And I actually was mining out of 3 dilithium moons, 2 tritanium moons. So I did have the economy to double yard generics here. Although, even though it is a relatively small 4-player map, 4-player maps are still the biggest maps in the game. So it still takes a long time to just travel over there. So I did want to start threatening these miners as soon as possible, even though it's going to take a very long time to kill them. And that was where I actually decided to refit the ships. Because I believe that Spectres have higher speed, so refitting it on the other side of the map would allow it to travel faster. But I don't think it even does have much faster speed. It's not a very big difference. So I ended up upgrading 2 of them in this game, but no more than that. Now, meanwhile, so on the left side, Jokarrr is building smaller combat ships looking to deal some damage. You can see there is a Tritanium moon that's hidden in the back on MMartok's side, and you can see the yellow dots where Jokarrr is raiding him there. MMartok, on the other end, is going for those warbirds, which are very high, they're very large battleships. The thing about warbirds is, in the early game, because they can cloak, they can become invisible, it's very difficult to kill them because they can almost always escape. So the warbirds, they're not very stat efficient for their cost. They're very expensive. And so in a straight up slugfest, they are going to struggle to do damage. But the fact that they can just fly away, that they can escape, they're very hard to kill, makes them very tactical in the early game. So on that side, we see this conflict of MMartok going for a very small number of big ships and sacrificing early defenses, while Jokarrr builds smaller ships and tries to raid, tries to deal damage. And they go back and forth. On the right-hand side, my ally, Star Master Prodigy, he was going for late game as Federation. He was going for Sovereigns, which is just about the last, like the highest tier Federation ship there is. The only one that you'd consider bigger would be the Phalanx, and that's only available to Risner. And it does AoE damage. It's actually not that good against Borg. So the Sovereign is the strongest late game ship against Borg. It also has an area engine disable effect, which can be very powerful because when you're fighting with the Borg, positioning is incredibly important. The Borg are very good at escaping. And the way the Borg operate in this game is they have a small number of very large ships. And these ships tend to not be the strongest, well, by comparison, because they're so expensive and because the Borg don't get very many of them. The Borg ships will tend to die very quickly in a direct confrontation. However, the Borg ships, because they are single large entities, if a Borg ship is able to kill 1 or 2 enemy ships and then run away and escape successfully, then you lost nothing. Nothing died at all. And so Borg ships can start to stack very effectively as long as they fight with them. And this is another balance issue that we have with the game, is if a player fights or if a player doesn't fight, how fast can they build up? If you have a game where both sides do absolutely nothing, some races will beat others. Romulans in particular, at least in this version, if neither side fights each other at all and they both just go for their strongest late game unit starting from the beginning of the game, then the Romulans are going to lose because their strongest late game stuff is not that competitive. In this version, they have access to the Scimitar, which is a very, very powerful ship. You're limited to 1 or 2 of them depending on your avatar. But still, overall, the Romulans do struggle. So here you see, I think I killed 2, maybe even 3 of these miners, but then the beam sphere showed up. So it targets multiple things. And you'll see here, even though I have 5 ships here, I'm starting to realize I can't really I'm going to struggle to beat this thing. So, and even though I have, so this is, he had laid it out with beam modules, which increase its resistance against beam damage and also give it the ability to reflect beam weaponry. So it's a good thing that only 2 of my ships have beams, the 2 that I upgraded to Spectres, and I kept the rest as basic generics. So even though I do have the exact right weaponry to kill this sphere, and I have 5 ships, I have to retreat from him because the generics, they're not that strong. Yeah, they can't compete with that kind of ship. So at this point, I have to send all of my ships home to repair. I gave them a repair command, and they decided they were going over to the side because MightyMaster had built a repair yard there and gotten the allied repair upgrade, which allows your other players on the same team as you to repair there. So at this point, I think I just saw 9. I had 9 generics maybe, and then I think even more completed. I was really trying to stack them up, but I have to be careful with this. A lot of fights in fleet operations happen between small numbers of ships, and they involve retreating. You might have some battles, especially if you have defensive ships. Oh, okay, there we go. So in this game, Patawan was Romulans, and he had gone for torpedo Rians, I think, which are long-range, highly offensive small ships, but they don't have very strong defensive stats, so they can get caught and killed. They have to kite, they have to stay on the edge of a battle. And a lot of battles are like that. A lot of battles are about faster ships with long range, preying on slower ships, retreating and shooting backwards, playing the range game, like trying to get the last hit on your enemy without losing it yourself. And there he actually got, as Winter StarCraft said, more things counter less things is the fundamental RTS rule. And so there the fact that 2 players sent their combat ships against 1 player, Patawan lost a fair amount. Although the sphere did show up, and it does start doing heavy damage to WarpCore's Klingon ships. I don't know if WarpCore actually lost very many here. He probably did, though, honestly. Well, okay, there's one of his Quebecs getting to repair. And maybe another one. Maybe he actually did do very well. The thing about the sphere, because the Borg ships can be built in multiple ways, I prefer the single target variants because the sphere that only shoots at one thing, its overall damage is not very high, but it does at least focus that damage on one target, which allows you to get kills. This beam sphere, this high-level beam sphere, because it has 3 beam modules on it, I think it shoots 4 targets at once, and it can reflect beam weapons. Maybe it's only hitting 3, it's hard to tell. No, yeah, there it is. It shoots 4 targets at once, and its overall damage per second is high. However, it spreads that damage over multiple targets, which gives it the one specific drawback in situations like this, where it can't get kills, because it's scratching all of my units. All of my units have shield regeneration, which is slow, but it happens. So he can't kill my ships very effectively with that one. So the beam sphere is, like, if you can get several of them, many ships in this game scale differently. So the beam sphere is one where if you get lots of beam spheres, if you can get 4 or 5 beam spheres, you dish out a tremendous amount of overall damage, and you can start killing lots of things. However, a single beam sphere, you can see even now, like, I'm having such a hard time killing him. I'm really trying to chase him down. Even giving some money away, but like, I'm really trying to chase him and kill him. But if he goes back by his starbase has guns that will kill my ships. Yeah, there we go. So I gotta escape. And I took a subsystem hit, so that ship lost life support. It has to go back and repair at a yard now. So yeah, I didn't kill the sphere, but I damaged it, and it does regenerate kind of slowly because the beam modules don't give you any bonus to regeneration. So I did manage to scare him off, and now I can go kill the mining again. And you see, these Borg miners are so tough. They have so many hit points on them, and Drayzon has already replaced all 4 of his. I think I'd only killed 3 of them, but like, I was amazed in this game by how much Drayzon replaced his miners, like immediately after I killed them, and they were just back to mining again. However, it did cost him a fair amount to replace them, but he actually didn't lose too much mining time because of it. So yes, my swarm of generics is coming in. I'm killing these guys. The Borg sphere has to go. Like I said, I didn't kill it. I didn't kill a single Borg combat ship. I don't know if I killed a single Borg combat ship this entire game until the end. But that's not how it happens, you know. I mean, if you do kill a Borg ship, they're kind of dead. Like if the Borg lose any of their of their large combat ships in a game like this, they're in huge trouble. The way that Borg have to play is to never lose anything. But still, as long as I'm stacking up these ships more and more and more, you see that one actually ran out of crew right while it was waiting in line, but I was able to get it in. Yeah, like the Borg don't actually lose ships, but by damaging the sphere and forcing it to retreat for a couple minutes, I gained map control over this area. Now there are some different designs in Tryptic's mod and in Admiral's Edition. In Tryptic's mod, the Borg actually, it's not as bad for them when their ships die. They can actually they sort of keep some of the resources of the ship when the ship dies, so rebuilding it is cheaper than building it the first time. And I think that's very important because, like I say, otherwise it can be very difficult for the Borg when they lose a ship. If they lose their first sphere, they might be completely out of the game. Like, they might never be able to recover from that. Now, Drayzon has built a diamond, as we saw there. The diamond is an extreme late-game ship of the Borg. He put quite a lot of resources into that, mostly collective connections, which takes time. So he could not have gotten it until now, and he probably invested a large amount of resources into upgrading his nodes level, which is how fast you gather collective connections. Oh, and you see here, I decided to just take a little detour. They did capture one of my cruisers back there. So I decided, I was like, oh, hey, so, you know, I know MMartok has a small number of battleships, so I can just go kill some of his stuff and he can't do anything about it. Those nanites are very dangerous. You see that little gray cloud? That's the nanite special ability of the Borg, and it has a chance to disable engines, and it disables cloaking devices. So that was close. If he had actually landed that nanite swarm right in the middle of my fleet, all of my guys probably would have decloaked and he would have gotten some serious kills. That almost, like, I almost lost the majority of my fleet in that moment. That was very scary, but I did escape. Now over here we see, so there was one scimitar out, which is the latest of late game ships for the Romulans. It's the peak of their tech tree. It requires several tech buildings. MMartok had gotten it and he was starting to fight back against Jokarrr. And that scimitar, it can fly around. It might not get kills, although it probably will get a couple kills because it's very high offense. Oh yeah, some of my ships accidentally flew through there and got killed. But the scimitar will not die. Like, the scimitar can always cloak and come back and repair. And repairs do not cost any money in this game. It's free to return to full health. So right now, Jokarrr has a problem. But there's only one scimitar, and this is where I realized, hey, well, you know, I've got Generics. I deal bonus damage to large. He built one of his tech buildings out here in order to save time earlier, but I can just blow it up. So after blowing up some of MMartok's mining, I decided to blow up his expansion here as well. And then I realized, shoot, I can get the yard, because the Warbird construction yard is incredibly expensive in this game. You have a large amount of starting resources in this game, which you kind of have to spend on these yards. If your yards get destroyed, you're in deep trouble. At this point, I had decided to go up to my own Warbirds, and I was going to go up to the Nerexans, which there's two versions. One has pulse weaponry to beat small ships. One has torpedo weaponry to beat large ships. And then I remembered, oh, but there's also the Salar, which is a Romulan warbird which has a special ability which can stun a single target for a short period of time. And this ability in particular is very powerful against the Borg. And so I should have gotten it much earlier. I hadn't played this version in a long time. Salars are also in Tryptic's mod. In fact, in Tryptic's mod, they're available to both avatars instead of just one of them. As you see there, I blew up the Warbird yard while it was building a scimitar. So now he's going to have a very hard time, because also, since I blew up the upgrade facility, in order for MMartok to get that scimitar, like to build that second scimitar, he has to rebuild the Warbird yard and the upgrade facility, which is about 2,000 dilithium. So, right, where was I? Oh, right. So, at this point, I started focusing on getting those Salars up so that I could get the later game stuns and to catch these diamonds. Because the trick about Borg is, some ships and some races, their ships can only fire forward. which means if they are retreating, they can't always kite backwards. However, Borg ships can shoot in any direction, and diamonds are an absolute nightmare for that reason. A diamond, because of its damage and its hit points, it's actually pretty easy to kill if you're in the middle of a big fleet fight. The diamond, if you focus your fire on the diamond, it will just die. But the diamond has long range, it has pretty fast speed, and it can cast nanites, which is an area of effect engine disable. So your fleet, if the diamond just stays on the edge of the conflict like you see it doing there, and disables engines, and once you attack, it starts running away. That's the thing about the Borg. The Borg can always kite. They can always either approach you or run away from you, and they can always keep you on the edge of their range and keep on shooting at you. So diamonds in this game are extremely deadly. They punch way above their weight class because of their inherent ability to kite you. Actually, in Tryptic's mod, I've modified the balance of them a bit. Because in this version, if you have multiple nanite clouds, their abilities stack. So both nanite swarms have a chance to disable you. In Tryptic's mod, I made the nanite swarm a little bit stronger, but I made it a little bit like the, what's it called, parasitic bomb ability in StarCraft 2, like they did with that one. I made it stronger than it used to be, but it doesn't stack. A group of units can only be affected by one nanite swarm at once in Tryptic's mod, which this is not. I think that made it a little bit fairer, because the other thing is diamonds are another ship that scales. In this game, Drayzon never gets more than a few of them, but in other games, if a person does get, for example, 5 diamonds, they're almost impossible to kill, because 5 diamonds, 5 nanite swarms, each of those nanite swarms disabling subsystems, like with a pretty good chance, almost your entire fleet will have engines, weapons, sensors disabled and start drifting. So in this scenario, we on the bottom team, we have to fight. We have to keep fighting constantly, because if he gets more diamonds, we will die. Like, my ships will eventually get outclassed. And here you see Drayzon landed a perfect nanite cloud on me, and I was like, oh shoot, my guys, I'm losing engines on some of them. Like, most of my ships can escape, but not all of them. And fortunately, I just had so much firepower, and also the spheres were extremely damaged from fighting against MightyMaster. And I was actually trying to ambush LIMON's spheres. Oh, am I remembering wrong? Was it not LIMON in this game? Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't LIMON. Who was it? I'll put it in the description. It was someone else. We had a couple people coming in and going today on this day. Shoot, who was it? I'm sorry. I'll get your name right later. Anyway, oh right, my generics have an ability which disables weapons on the target. Not for very long, just for like a few seconds, but that can be very valuable when that diamond is putting out incredible damage. As you see, I don't know, I didn't lose very many. I did get one of them disabled, like it lost engines, and it's going to sit there for a long time until it recovers them. And then this one's almost dying. However, for the most part, because I haven't been too severely threatened, I've been able to send my generics back to repair. And even though I failed to kill those 2 spheres again, and they did escape, and okay, I think I actually lose a generics there. Or no, maybe I don't. Even though we threatened them, it's still so hard to kill them. Now, the Sovereigns have an engine disable ability of their own. Its area of effect is not very big, and it's centered around the ship, which makes it a lot harder for them to tag things with it than the Diamond special. However, you can see it is very effective. However, when your engines are disabled, you do drift a little bit. I think he gets the kill here. Yeah. Like, the last torpedo hits that, and then we have to run. But, like, if the enemy is flying away from you and you disable their engines, they'll continue to drift away from you a little bit. Whereas if they're flying towards you and you disable their engines, they'll drift towards you, and that can be really dangerous. So here's I lost generics. I lose another one. I had built so many. Like, it's okay to lose a couple. And I believe we got the last hit on that sphere and killed it, which is a huge victory. One sphere in basic resources costs as much as about 4 generics, But it also costs the collective connections, which are time, and time is very valuable. So you see here, yeah, the scimitar came in, and we had our disables ready. The other thing is cloaking requires your weapons subsystem. So if he tries to cloak, my generics can disable his weapons. Yep, there you see. And actually his weapons took damage and went into the destroyed state. And Borg ships, if they get their weapons destroyed, they recover them very quickly, but other races' ships do not. So at this point, I think we had him. He couldn't shoot, he couldn't cloak, and he was getting engine disabled occasionally. So I believe we do kill him here. Yep, we kill the scimitar. And also, you see those Klingon ships, the Klingon cruisers shaped like triangles, those are Vorcha, and those also have a special ability that disables subsystems. It does it at random, but when a group of several Vorcha shoot at a target, they're going to they're hopefully to disable what you want. And the Borg stations in this version have that holding beam will slowly capture a ship, and it lasts forever. So they will eventually get it. However, it is dependent on the weapon system of the station. So when I disable weapons on the station, the beam drops, although it comes right back. So as you can see here, we decided to just go ahead and kill this building. I don't think there was too much value to it at this point. He had already researched everything he was going to research off of it, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, okay, he was getting devastating attack, but there wasn't much more he needed off of it. But we did decide to blow it up so that we wouldn't lose a sovereign. And I had the Salars, and I did. Oh right, so in the previous battle I'd had the Salars around, but I didn't have the disable special yet. And everyone in that fight was like, do you have the disable special? Do you have the disable? And I was like, I'm working on it. I should have gotten it sooner. I'm sorry, guys. But I finally got it, although the range isn't super long, and it doesn't last too long. So you see that sphere actually got away again. And this upgraded starbase starts pounding on our ships again. And I think once again we were forced to retreat. We blew up the station. We blew up the scimitar. So like MMartok on the left side had been horribly raided, and like between MMartok and Jokarrr going back and forth with each other, fighting each other, the fact that I blew up that warbird yard and that other stuff, I think that was enough that from that point onward, Jokarrr was just winning the fight. And there you see there's the nanites are on my battleship, so I started to stun one of the diamonds. I think it gets away from me though. Maybe? No, there's an engine disable. And there's another engine disable. Okay, I think we did get this one. Yeah, because there's 3 sovereigns, there's 2 Salars. We just have a lot of single target disabling ability. And this is one of the disadvantages of the Borg in big team games. They do have the nanite special, which is like the single strongest feature of all Borg in team games. But you got to watch out, because when you're playing 3 opponents, 4 opponents, someone on the enemy team is going to get a powerful single target disabling ability that's going to mess up your day with your ships. And in Tryptic's mod, I actually modified the way that special weapons affect ships so as to make it so that certain Borg ships, you could build your Borg ships to be resistant to special weapons. They're not always, but for example, there is a module configuration you can choose for the diamond that makes it immune to all disabling effects, although it doesn't have much combat strength. So here we see MightyMaster's production complex. It's also worth noting that he did grab that forward dilithium moon, which is bonus income, because Star Master Prodigy, this whole game, he has had 3 dilithium, 2 tritanium, and I've had 3 dilithium. And everyone else, I think, is just on 2 di, 2 tri. No, actually, Jokarrr took the dilithium in the left. So we have had a resource income advantage. However, the Borg have the perfect logistics upgrade, which allows them to get a little bit of bonus income from their home miners. So, and the fact that Drayzon, so the Borg have had decent income this whole game. Although Drayzon and they've had their center miners blown up so much. We've blown away their miners so many times that certainly cost them quite a lot. And so over time, the value of our fleets is just going to get higher, even though I've lost a couple generics. The loss of that, yeah, we've killed 1 sphere, we've killed 1 diamond, and so we are definitely winning that fight. Oh yeah, at that point I asked for some tritanium back, so I could get that. Oh yes, and also Jokarrr came in. Jokarrr came in to kill the new warbird yard, which was a very risky thing. I mean, he was losing his whole fleet. And that diamond being there with the nanite special, the diamond just went to town on those poor small Klingon ships. And I think Jokarrr actually decided to stick it out and try to just kill the Yard, even if he lost his whole fleet. And at that point, it was kind of like, even though it wasn't a good trade for Jokarrr, in a one-on-one sense, we were ahead enough that it was worth it to just start losing stuff in order to trade. And also it keeps the diamond over there, because the diamond has to stay there until it's done killing all the stuff. So at this point, we decided to go and take out Patawan's starbase. Although team decision-making takes a lot of work. So I think we struggled to figure out exactly what we were doing here. So, for reference, just describing some of these ships we have here, Jokarrr is using Quebecs, which are just small medium-range ships. Those are the ones with the little toothpick-looking front. They're just a medium. They're a small size, medium range, no special passives, and a beam weapon, so they do the same damage to everything. The other ship he has, the triangular one, well, the interesting one is the Sang. That's a small ship with long-range torpedoes, no special passes, but that means it's pretty good at shooting at those Borg ships. I am using Generix, which is a medium-size, medium-range torpedo ship, so it deals bonus damage to stations and large ships, which, as we mentioned, is nice. The Sailors are large battleships with long range. They have beam weapons, and they have a passive that makes them take reduced damage from long range. And the diamonds are long range. So my little forward swept wing Sailors there, they take reduced damage from the diamonds. Basically, the diamonds would very much struggle to kill them. Also, ships will automatically target the unit with the lowest defense. So his ships would be automatically targeting my Generix and killing them anyway. The Sovereigns here, they have a passive that makes them take reduced damage from short range, but nothing in this entire game has short range that we played, so that didn't really help them out too much. But the Sovereigns are large battleships with medium range, and half their weaponry is torpedo, half of it is beam, so they get a little bit of bonus damage to large, and they have the area engine disable. So as you can see, like, subsystem disabling effects are very important in this game. And those bigger Klingon ships, those are Vorcha. They are medium-range cruisers with a medium-range beam weapon. They take half damage from short range. Once again, doesn't mean anything in this game, but it's nice. And then they have the special that disables disables subsystems on single targets. So we did build anti-Borg ships here. There is not much in the Romulan arsenal that is more effective than what I had here, because I had weapon disabling torpedo cruisers, and I had ship disabling, like, long-range battleships. Like, most of the other stuff I didn't build would not have been as good here. And yeah, there you see, I decided to stop building Generix and go for a larger yard. And then I decided to go for Nerexans. Nerexans, say the torpedo Nerexan in particular, it deals bonus damage to long range. So it actually will do increased damage to the diamonds, which is a nice way. I figured at this point I had enough Sailors. I was able to keep stunning. I could go for Nerexans. Nerexans are a little bit later game. They're a little bit stronger, and they have that torpedo damage. So their damage output would be much higher than the Sailors. But I think at this point we had them locked down. There we see WarpCore's fleet of Quebecs and Vorchas retreating off into the Green Nebula. The Green Nebula restores shields. And so while he's in that nebula, he lasts longer, but he was facing, I think, 2 diamonds. Oh yeah, 2 diamonds, 3 spheres between the top players. And the diamonds, their damage output is just so extreme in that one torpedo that they really can focus you through the shield regen and they can heal. The beam spheres are actually horrible here because they're spreading their damage over multiple targets, and then the Green Nebula is restoring shields on all of those ships. So the poor beam spheres are almost completely negated. But also the important thing here was that the diamonds, I think they can only cast nanites 3 times before they have to recharge for 2 minutes. So he had been casting nanites on all these Klingon ships, and he didn't have very many casts of it left. And so there, the Sovereigns showed up, and there's just so many engine disables. That blue thing going off is an engine disable. And after trying to figure out what I was doing, I finally decided to show up, and I was like, are we fighting next to the starbase? And we're like, yeah, we're fighting next to the starbase. So fortifications like that starbase, they have a lot of damage output, but we just have so many hit points. And starbases do spread their fire around targets a little bit, so similar to the beam spheres, like in this fight, you see Drayzon very wisely like keeping those diamonds running like all the way to the back corner, just trying to deal some damage at range. But I did have the Salars, and I finally got the stun on one of them. And at this point, even though each Salar only stuns for about 5 seconds, when you've got, I think, 6 Salars, maybe 5, that's like 25 seconds of stun. So unfortunately, he wasn't going to make it, yeah. And you saw the spheres got taken out. The spheres, like I said, the spheres were just tragic in this situation because they did all that spread out damage over all of our cruisers and battleships, and they struggled to kill individual cruisers and battleships. It was always a rough battle. This was always a very difficult battle for the top team because of the double Borg, because Borg struggles to perform in large team games. But I still think they fought very admirably, and I think all of the counters were correct. Like we built all of the correct ships to counter what they were doing. I went in and tried to cause economic damage when I saw a weakness, and Drayzon tried to fight as much as he possibly could once he did get the ships. I don't know what a good answer would have been. Probably to go for a sphere a little bit earlier and chase off my original Generics a little bit, so that he wouldn't lose so much economic time before the diamonds came out. But it was still rough all around because, like I say, we were winning against MMartok on the left, they were winning against Patawan on the right, and the whole thing just sort of fell eventually. But yeah, that's the kind of game that we play, and that was a really fun one for me. Obviously, it was a little bit less for the other guys, but I'll see if I can bring you guys more of them because I think it's fun to watch as well as to play. And if any of you guys want to come join us, we can get you the mod for free. Like it doesn't technically require the original A2 files, so we can hook you up. You can join our Hamachi and play online with us, and it's a really the people are definitely willing to help teach you how the game works because it is a bit of a complicated game, but it's a ton of fun. All right, I'm gonna see if I can do another video tonight. This is Tryptic signing off.